Well, it all started back in it was like middle school. Um, I did band because that option sounded more appealing than I think like it was a typing class or something. That was the other option. So I was like, okay, I'll do band. And they put me, I wanted to be on the drum line, but you had to audition for that. So I wasn't good enough. I was one of those kids who had like pretty rough rhythm, like a hard time understanding that for a second. Um, so they put me on trumpet, and I was really bad at trumpet. I didn't understand like how the like just didn't make sense to my mind, like how you're supposed to like only have three keys, but then 12 notes come out of it. Like it just didn't make sense to me. Then they put me on trombone, which I also was bad at. I just would watch like my uh seat buddy, like how far you're supposed to stick the slide out. And the following year, there was a saxophone opening, uh, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna try this out." And that like clicked instantly with me. I was like, "All these buttons, it makes sense."
Yeah.
Um, so I've just been playing sax ever since then. I did it like in high school, the orchestras, the marching band, the jazz band, and I also started during that time because I always wanted to do like I had them like segregated as like, oh, this was a school band, like a um formal situation, and then I wanted to do like a cool band, like like a rock band or whatever. Uh and I picked up bass in high school because I like friends who played guitar, drums, and no one played bass. So I was like, I guess I'll do that. And thankfully, the bass is pretty easy to like, do the basics on. So I started taking lessons on that. I had like a band for a couple of years called Serotone. We made like Sublime, Nirvana inspired stuff. Um,
Hell yeah.
Th- yeah, and I originally did not want to go to college. I was like ready to just be like, "Yo, we're gonna go hard with the band," but my parents were like, "That's not a good idea." Um, so probably for the best. I got accepted into like a music school, UF in Gainesville, Florida. I'm from South Florida, so I went up to Gainesville to pursue like a saxophone performance degree, um, which I later found out was exclusively classical. They were not really a big fan of jazz music. My professor did not there was a jazz minor, and the classical sax professor wasn't like a fan of the commingling because I mean it did like affect your technique and just how you would play classical music. Um, so I also saw what getting a performance major in saxophone, like what happens, 10 years, 20 years down the line. And it kind of is just you're performing for other saxophone majors in small rooms, just traveling around to colleges. And that wasn't the life for me. So I stopped the music major, did like a jazz minor, and moved over to PR. I had a couple of bands during this time. I started a brass band. I did a uh, it's it's like acoustic electronic music. There was this band called Moonhooch and Too Many Zoos. They played in the subways of New York, and I just loved that sound, and I was really drawn to it. And I thought that was going to be the big thing. I was like, okay, this is so dope. Like they're making all this like super hype dancey music with these like unconventional instruments, and I really thought it was going to catch on more so than it did. Um, so I just had like that project I was going hard on all throughout college. Um, then after college, that group fell apart as groups tend to do. Um, I decided to kind of move out to a city where, because Gainesville's like a small college town, there's not like a ton of people there. So like outside of this small music school, there's not really a lot of people to collaborate with. Um, I chose Austin because New York and LA just were too expensive. And as I like, I'm in a house right now, so I like to make a lot of noise in the middle of the night. And that just doesn't fly in an apartment. So
Very true.
yeah, that it just wouldn't have like it wouldn't have been a great situation if I was like crammed in some small apartment in New York or LA. So I came out to Austin. I linked up with a bunch of cool musicians. The first guy I met out here, actually, I still play with to this day. His name's Nick Swift. We do a lot of like covers of pop, R&B, soul, that type of vibe. He also does like originals, but it's the money gigs where you're at like a bar or restaurant. And I was doing that with him for the money stuff. I got like into a couple schools where I was teaching lessons to kind of like sustain. Uh, and then I met, I was just looking for people who were wanted to go like hard at like original music. And I found a homie who's no longer a homie, but at the time we were homies. We linked up on like a lot of different things. Like our styles were pretty similar. We had like kind of the same idea of what we wanted to do. So we started this like indie pop band called Heavy Metal Book Club. We grinded like super hard it was like a little over a year. We were trying to put out a song a month. We were just practicing like 3-4 times a week for uh hours, and then meeting up outside of that to do like the whole, oh, how are we gonna like promote this on social media. Like we were trying to think of like the big picture. I had Ari Herstand's book of like how to make it in the new music industry, and I was like, this is my Bible, and trying to like follow all the steps and make sure I was doing it right. And then we kind of started like butting heads because we couldn't find a drummer, and when it was just two of us, and there wasn't like a long-term drummer who was in the project, because I was doing bass, he was doing guitar vocals. We were kind of having drummers coming in and out. We kind of just had a little too many disagreements, and it completely fell apart. Like we just stopped completely. I haven't spoken with him since the day like we broke up. It was not a good situation. And that was the moment when I decided like, okay, I can't do that again. I can't like waste all of this time into a project that like now no longer exists. So I started doing production. Like I dabbled in it a little bit. Like I got a cracked version of Ableton 10, like because my roommate in college was like a computer science guy, so he knew how to do all that, and he hooked it
Yeah.
up for me. Because that's scary to me, like going on those like torrent sites and
Yeah.
yeah. But he got it all set up, and that was cool. I started dabbling with that, but it wasn't until like that band broke up where I was like, this needs to be the way, because it just was way too much wasted time to like put that into like be reliant on someone else like that. So also, like studios are expensive, and we were quickly learning that like, oh hey, if we're putting out a track every month, we're spending like at least $300 to $500, like at a not a great quality studio, like something like this room, recording at some guy's house. And why don't we just do that ourselves so we can like refine it to the point we want. So I was already like starting to get into it, but after we broke up, I kind of went hard on it. Excuse me. And that's how Vivid Fever Dreams was born. Originally, I was like just going to make like beats and stuff, and then have like guest vocalists, feature on tracks, and kind of ride that vibe. But I found that it gets flaky sometimes. Like if you're trying to do stuff like quick, if you're working with like a bunch of different people, like all their schedules are crazy. There's always problems that they want fixed in the mix, and it gets a lot. So I decided, I was like, okay, I guess I got to learn how to sing now. And um, yeah, that's still an ongoing journey. That's definitely like by far my weakest area. The first couple of tracks, if you go like into my discography and like listen to the first couple of songs I put on, it's rough. I started taking vocal lessons. I was like watching YouTube videos because I was like, oh, that's how I learned like all these other instruments. So I could just like watch YouTube videos and figure it out. Uh, the having a vocal teacher just like changed the game of like how I was like breathing and using my diaphragm, and it helped a ton. I still am like far from where I want to be, but I'm glad I did all those things. It's made me like a better overall musician. It's made me like appreciate the aspect of like building a song all by yourself, and made me just appreciate like listening to music more when I hear like really cool sounds or cool production. Like, whoa, how did that happen? Or uh, so I've been grateful of it, and it's been a fun ride. And now we're here on this Zoom call or Skype call. Um,
Yeah. I mean, so
yeah,
I feel like there's this common like point that a lot of, you know, musicians, at least that I've talked to, face where you're at least somewhat classically trained at the beginning, and then you realize either in college or in, some kind of traditional musical education environment that you don't want to be doing things, I don't want to say the right way, but in a way like the right way. Like you kind of want to make your own sound, you want to experiment, you don't want to just be playing basically what's on like the paper,
the
right?
pay,
In a,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's really interesting that, it's this common motif that I see. And I think it's telling that the people who really want to experiment and put yourself out there. I mean, like you're putting yourself out there saying, look, this is still rough, or look, I'm still looking to improve in all these different ways. Like I think that that's why the musicians that I've talked to, or at least that I am able to have kind of longer conversations, they kind of follow the same trend. And it's not surprising actually that you also shared a lot of those. You know, I had a classical piano training, for example. You had classical training on saxophone, and in college and before, and other horn instruments. And yeah, I think it's interesting, but also not surprising. The more that I think about it, the more it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like, I don't know how old you are, but like I'm 27, and I feel like
Same.
okay, yeah, like when we were going into college, I don't know how it was like where you're at, but like where I was at, it was like you gotta go to college. You gotta
Of course.
get a degree. And it was definitely, it wasn't like a bad thing, but I got like a public relations degree. I met my current girlfriend there. We're still dating. So it wasn't like a negative experience, but there's a lot of things. And luckily, I wasn't like burdened with a ton of student debt like some people get. I was fortunate in that aspect. So, I definitely dodge a lot of bullets, but especially if you're trying to be a musician and then you go to college thinking that it's going to be um, like you have to do that to be a successful musician. Um, it's like a trap. There's a lot of things that can happen that will like hinder it instead of pushing you forward to where you need to go. As opposed to if you were just like hitting it, like going to shows, networking, playing shows, um, like which one would have been more beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I obviously didn't go to school for like music as my major or anything, but I did take my minor was like in physics and sound, and so I did a lot of music production classes, and part of that was also taking some classes in like musical careers where you'd learn. I'm sure you took classes like that. You learn about the type of jobs that you can get based on different kind of music degrees, and you realize like, holy shit, like most of these people are just either playing in an orchestra, or they're like a teacher's assistant, or they're like playing for a school.
Or a
It's like,
professor, you're trying to become a professor,
exactly,
or yeah.
exactly.
It's such a small circle of things you can do, and it's like outside of that, like the skills are essentially useless. Like if like let's say the classical saxophone thing isn't working out for you after getting like a master's in it, and you go to like a corporate job, and you're like, what's your experience? Oh, I play classical saxophone. And it's like, well, that's not going to really help. That's not going to help you do these spreadsheets. um
Yeah.
so yeah, it's definitely like it's good for the people who are aware of that's what they want to do. If like someone wants to be a band director, if someone wants to like really like classical saxophone's what inspires them and they want to like really dive into that, like cool. But I mean, you're talking about like, oh, I had a class about music jobs that you can get with these degrees. Like there was none of that at the college I went to. It it was very like they were a lot of music schools are still kind of like stuck in the past on how like they're being operated. Um, and it's really not great for younger musicians who are trying to like make a living doing music in the modern day. Like the jazz part was like what had the useful information in it, and that was kind of being like the guy who ran the jazz program over there. He kind of in some situations was like ostracized from the rest of the school because they didn't like how he was, oh, this cavalier guy coming up in here doing like things differently and uh, just caused some tension. And he was the one who actually was giving us like, hey, like talked about sync licensing, talked about like, oh, if you want to like get gig, like that was where the information came from. Like the classical school definitely is not a concern that they have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially if you want to become, I mean, you're doing a lot of gigs, right? If you want to become a gig musician, right? Like part of that is understanding like the economics about being a gig musician, right? Like understanding you're not going to get a W-2 like, from a job, right? You're going to have to do your taxes like as a gig individual, and the skill set, right? Uh, I often find myself like criticizing in some ways the education system for like the same reasons that you kind of mentioned, where it falls short, but especially for in the any kind of creative art, the essential skills for the people who do want to go into those non education, non performance, like whether it's a band that's not like a small band but like a large band orchestra setting. It's they just they don't provide the skill set necessary, and I feel like it wouldn't even be that crazy of a change, right? They would only need to add, like, maybe it would be a crazy change because a lot of the people are quite traditional and set in their ways, so any kind of a change is a crazy change. But I don't know, from my perspective, there's a lot of valuable information to be taken from like learning technique, and that can make you an even better gig musician or an even better person to play with, who even if you're going into studio production or studio music recording. But if you don't have if you don't have people skills, right, what are you going to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you don't know how to network, if you don't know how to if you don't know how to like think about your financial situation, you're really going to be lost. And yeah, I think it is a little bit sad for young people who want to go into the creative arts, who are being basically you know softly coerced into going into higher education, because it's kind of just, you have to do that to be a successful person, quote unquote, even though it's totally not true. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I couldn't agree more with all the things that you mentioned, and how they're just missing things.
I will say that was when I learned my 12 scales forward and backwards because I just was
Yeah,
playing them over and over and over. So that was where I got those down.
yeah,
Like I'll know this for the rest of my life because I played them so many times. Um, so yeah, definitely like the technique stuff. There's definitely some things it does right, but there's also like so much of it that's not there. That really needs to be there if you're charging the amount of money that is being charged uh, to go through these programs.
yeah. Also, there's some ways in which when you learn in a traditional way, it can give you a great advantage, such as playing scales. But you can also get locked into an area where, in a way, it's an art, right? It's a performative art, especially. And so a lot of the times people like to go to a performance because the person's doing something different, right? They're doing something unusual. They're holding the guitar backwards the way that they're not supposed to be holding it, and that makes it exciting. Someone's playing a guitar chord and they're gripping it upside down, right? That's seen as like a cool move, and maybe that's what makes that guitar player have like an edge on the competition when it comes to performance and gaining fans. And so yeah, I think that it's definitely a double-edged sword where you gotta you know weigh different things. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, like I try, like earlier we were talking about like lessons and that type of thing, and like how do you impose like an environment where like a student can, because it is interesting, we're talking about this now, and then now I'm in a position where I'm teaching other kids how to play. Like there's a line where I'm not in a college, so like a lot of sometimes like the kids don't want to be there, so that kind of is a different dynamic. But um making the music like an interesting thing for them, and like something that they can do properly without like dissuading their interest, or causing them to quit. Because I have had a couple of times where like there was a technique problem, where there was um a song that they just were not practicing, and I just was like, dude, come on, it's like you're so close to getting it down, you just have to like put a little bit of work in. And then they would just completely like pull back and not want to move
Yeah.
forward. And now I kind of take more of like a, yeah, I try not to push as hard, because I get concerned that that might cause them to pull back. And my like I do have like concerns in my head, like when I'm watching a student who like does something with wrong technique, or uh like they're playing drums and they're like not using like a good hand grip or something like that. Like I get concerned, like, oh, am I messing them up? Like are they gonna have like some
Yeah.
uh because I mean, like I've personally like suffered from like some carpal tunnel just from
Carpal
trying to,
tunnel. Yeah.
yeah, trying to teach myself how to play drums off of YouTube videos, and I was using really bad hand grip, and I didn't understand you're supposed to like let the sticks bounce. So I developed like, ah, this is annoying. Um, and I really like don't want to have, like I don't want them to like go through the same thing. So I try to like be on like, hey, don't hold the sticks like that. You're gonna hurt yourself. Hey, wear earplugs. You're gonna like start losing your hearing. Like that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do, as a teacher, right? You kind of have to do some of that. Like there definitely needs to be some kind of rules and some kind of expectations to have basically a baseline of what you're trying to accomplish in your students. Um, and I mean, without that, right? I mean, what are you accomplishing, right? I mean, if your goal is to basically get someone excited about music, you should be getting them excited, but not at the cost of, like you said, like them developing, you know, either like physical harm to themselves or like some kind of other like serious technique deficiency where like
Like
it's going to
something
take
that
them
will like impair
years.
their, yeah, like a bad habit
Yeah.
that like they have to go
Yeah.
through like a long process of undoing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is also just, I feel like because it is like a music school where the like the people who run the school kind of want the kids to stay there, so you have a student, they kind of encouraged us to like be as accommodating as possible to meet the student where they're at. And like if the student is not super into it, or doesn't want to do something a certain way, like they always defer to like going with what the student wants to do, so that they're having a good, enjoyable time at the school, and continuing to get lessons. So that's also like another, uh, wrench thrown into it, where it's like, oh, well, if I lose the student, then, on that, like the school's out money, I'm out, like a student who I have. And it's just like, I don't know. That's why I've been kind of started being more picky about who I even take on anymore, because I've just had so many students who, like, the parent is like, hey, you're taking lessons and you're going to learn this instrument, and the kid is not about it, and you're just sitting there like talking to a wall for 30 minutes. because they just don't want to be there. So I've kind of started being a lot pickier, so that doesn't like stress me out so much. Um, it really does make all the difference because like the lesson will fly by if it's like a student who wants to learn, who like is engaged and is practicing.
Yeah, active.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it just makes it so much more enjoyable to like work with them versus like you're trying to like pull anything out of students who just are like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home.
Yeah, I've never taught like music to young people, but I have taught swim, and you know, it's the same thing. It's always, I'd say 90+% of the time, maybe even higher. If I was to actually, you know, do the math, it's really the parents that are causing most of the problems. I think, you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of, you know, kids who do want to learn, right? And sometimes they need to be uh, let go of their parents' kind of preconceived notions of what they should be doing while they're there, which, you know, or, you know, the parents' fears, whether that's not learning what they think they should be learning, or, you know, in swim, the parent has a fear of the water, right? And a lot of times that can affect the kid even more than their own fear of the water. So, you know, it's tough to see, you know, kind of, you know, inexperience, which is natural with all parents, right? I mean, no one's going to wake up and know exactly what to do, but, you know, I think we encourage a little bit too much of a like a tight grip over, you know, what our kids are doing, and then as a result, kind of forcing them into areas where they don't want to be, and then they don't want to be there, and then, you know, you're going to end up with a kid that's like, oh, why am I learning drums? I don't want to learn drums. I want to, you know, I don't know, whatever, like
Yeah.
play with Transformers, like, yeah.
I
So
will say I have had actually the exact opposite problem. Like this just came to mind, like the of like a more recent event where I had a student who just I taught her maybe for like a year and a half, and we made zero progress because they were like pretty they were pretty young. We were going through a book, a piano book, and the mom and dad just would not enforce like practice time. They just wouldn't
yeah,
like they straight up told me like, "Oh, she doesn't want to
yeah,
practice, so we're not going to make her practice." And
yeah,
but they're going to make her go to the lessons. So
yeah,
it just
yeah. That's a disaster.
yeah, it was rough. But like that type of stuff where like the parent wants them to do an instrument and then they don't want to like actually take minor steps to like control or like guide the kid's behavior into making like good decisions. Like, hey, instead of watching TikTok for 5 hours, I'm gonna practice the drums for 30 minutes. Uh
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's not a lot of that going on like with some students where like the parents
definitely.
will I feel like the parents will say I'm doing my parently thing because I'm encouraging them to be artistic, but then at home, they like pay for the lesson and that's like that is them doing that, but at home
That's
they
that.
won't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's definitely either one or the other, right? I mean, you either have the parent that's like way too involved, or you have the parent that like they, you know, basically like pay for the lesson and then it's hands off, and so then, you know, the kid doesn't practice at home, or, you know, they go home and do the exact opposite, and then, you know, you lost more than you helped, right? So that's, you know, just one of the it's one of the tough things. It's tough because you're dealing with not just someone who you're trying to teach, but you're dealing, because they're young, you're dealing with, you know, they're not in college yet. You're dealing with the environment that they're in, and, you know, they're not 100% responsible for how they use their time, right? I mean, parents are still, you know, they have majority of the responsibility. Even parents that like hire a babysitter, like you expect them to set some kind of standards of what they expect their kids to be doing. So if they're just not involved, then yeah, it's just gonna be the same problem
Especially
on the other
now,
side.
dude. I can't even imagine. Like, it is easier than ever before to like learn an instrument because of how many resources are out there that you can just kind of like, oh, look at all this knowledge I can grab and
Definitely.
learn some new skills. But on the other side, the amount of distractions, like the
Yeah.
amount of like shiny things. that will pull you away from it, like, real
TikTok
quick.
brain.
Yeah, TikTok brain, our goldfish attention spans. Um,
Oh yeah, it's awful.
it I like I honestly don't know how I would have fared if I like was growing up around like this level of um like stimulation, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like my parents probably would have just been like, "You're not, you're not going to do that. Like when you're at home, you're not going to be on that. Like, or we're not going to give you that kind of device." Like, I wasn't like really allowed to watch much TV, if any. Like, I was probably like allowed, like, I don't know, maybe like once a week. I don't even remember watching TV, to be honest. I was always like doing something, whether it was like sports or, art or music. Like, I always had some kind of responsibility that I needed to be and I need to be doing. And so I kind of like had a schedule, And I think a lot of kids also lack like a real schedule. They have a lot of like free time in a way where I think when you're young, I think the young mind really benefits just like at school, how you
Structure,
have like a
yeah.
regimented structure and schedule. I think it definitely helps instill like good, just like good practices and, helps enable the kid to learn, right?
And also just like become eventually self-sufficient.
Definitely.
Um yeah, it's definitely a problem. And I feel like even, I can't really blame like my parents for my like when I was really young, my grandma on my dad's side tried getting us, like me and my brother, a Pokemon VHS tape. And my dad was like, no, there's violence in that. They cannot watch that. It's, and he was like super protective. But then at a certain point, he kind of got like a lot more like, it's actually not that big of a deal. And like if they do it here and there. And we definitely, we're doing sports, doing music stuff. Uh, so we weren't like in it all the time. But I mean, the first like video game addiction I had was World of Warcraft. I was like hooked on that thing, and there was like it got to a point where it was like, hey, cut off. And
Yeah.
it's I feel like it's because like when he was young, nothing like that even existed really,
Yeah.
like uh what you spent 8 hours staring at your computer screen sitting in the exact same spot, like
Yeah.
that's inconceivable. Um Probably up until like 20 years ago or so. But
Yeah. The environment has changed drastically.
yeah, but now I feel like it's kind of very clear where like the problems are, especially with like kids uh
Yeah.
time. So hopefully, it starts to become a lot more clear to people, like, hey, no, don't do social media. Don't give your kids like a
Yeah.
account until they're like mature enough to understand what they're doing. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I think one thing that definitely helps that though is like it's becoming less cool to like have your kids on their devices. I feel like 15 years ago, or maybe even a little bit less, like having your kid on an iPad wasn't seen as like a bad thing. It was like, oh, it's just like a rich parent who has the money to give their kid an iPad, and so they're hip and they're trendy and blah 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 blah. But I feel like now it's becoming more and more seen as, you know,
Like yuck.
this is bad. Yeah.
Like the iPad kids is like a
Yeah.
derogatory term.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but I don't know, man. Just wait till those VR headsets come out, and then you start seeing a
Oh
bunch
my
of
god.
4-year-olds walking around with that.
The Vision Pro. They're gonna have to make adapters so that it actually fits on their heads. But yeah, seriously. So I'm
they'll
curious.
they'll do it.
Like they will. I know if it sells, they'll do it. It's 100% true. I'm curious, given that you like did have a classical background and what you went to school for. How have you been able to transition that into being able to do music and gigs successfully? Because even myself, like some of the most successful musicians who I went to school with, and you know, I went to Ithaca. They have like it started as a conservatory. A lot of musicians go to school there. Their music program is still considered pretty good. Even the more successful ones that I know, they a lot of them work regular jobs, like multiple regular jobs, just to be able to like half gig, right? And so how are you able to incorporate, or how did you get the skills needed? Like where can you point to for, where those skills came from? Were you always just driven, or, did you learn that from somewhere?
The main thing is just like keeping costs like as low as possible. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that like if I moved to New York, no, this would not be happening. If I moved
Yeah.
to LA, wouldn't be happening. But I moved to a place where it's getting bad. It's definitely getting pretty bad over here with like, just how much the housing's been going up. But we are fortunate we have like a local landlord who used to, he raised his family in this house. He has some sentimental attachment, and he's been very generous about not like hiking the price up. Like there were some of my friends who had the price hiked up, $200-$300. Ours got hiked 25 bucks, each.
Yeah.
So I guess 50 total. But it's things like that where, and when I moved into town, like I didn't live in Austin. I lived in Buda with three two other roommates, and it was $600 a month for the rent, and it was like that cheap to just like, hey, do a couple of lessons, and then now I like my rent's paid. I don't really eat out that much, so that's not like a cost if you just keep everything kind of like minimal and don't go like I don't buy like I've had this shirt for a long time, like since college. It's actually a free shirt from this
Yeah.
charity, Future Music Makers. We were playing like a charity gig and I got the shirt. But the point is like I don't spend a lot of money on like, oh, I gotta get like clothes and da da da.
Yeah.
I
No
just
designer stuff.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
spend it on music equipment. I
Yeah.
had a period of time where I was spending it on Facebook ads, which we can get into that uh aspect of like music promotion later. But like that's where I was funneling all of my extra money into, is just like trying to get something to happen with the original project. Like everything else that I was doing, like the lessons, the cover gigs, was just like paying the essential bills and then funneling that into the original music project. And I feel like if you don't do that, it's just not going to happen because it costs so much money. Like the amount of money it takes to like launch yourself, it's rough because you're competing with like record labels who are throwing tons of money at it. You're competing with other people like who are maybe in slightly better situations than I am, who just, made some good stock trades, made some good crypto trades, and have some money to, pump into their promotion. But if you're not like doing that, someone else is, and it's just making it significantly harder on yourself to get ahead. And like eventually the goal is to make a return off of it. So uh
Yeah.
it's just going to take longer and longer.
Yeah. I'm actually curious to know like your experience. I have my own experience when it comes to like specifically like music marketing ads, if you want to call it that. And I would say my opinion in general about kind of that area is decently negative. But yeah, I'm curious to know like really how you were using like Facebook or whatever you were using, and like what your experience with that was.
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of how I am currently on it. That's why I actually like when we were doing Heavy Metal Book Club, the previous band I was in, and this project, that Ari Hurston and a couple other of the music business people who I followed were that was the hype train. The Facebook ads, optimizing your audiences and all that stuff. So I was like, I spent a lot of time like learning that ecosystem on Facebook and like trying to figure out how to spend as little money as possible to get like actual people listening to it. And the strategy is, you got a month really to get your popularity score up to put you on um like one of the algorithm playlists like fresh finds. Um,
Yeah.
so you just need to channel a certain amount of people to push your popularity score up, and then once you do that, and your song, it has to be good, obviously, then it will like start, it'll be like a loop effect where it's just like, oh, now that it's getting algorithmically recommended to a bunch of people and they're saving it and liking it, then it's going to get pushed out more and more and more until it like grows. And that's the strategy. um I have not succeeded at that like a single time. And you might argue that like, okay, well, I was doing this when the music was still in a rougher place than it was now, which might be the case. But um the thing was, I had times where it was like working. It was like almost working, but then Facebook would like just change the algorithm and then everything would break. Like all of a sudden these like ad funnels that I had set up would just no longer be converting into streams. There was like every day there was like 10 to 20 new contingencies that would pop up. It wasn't consistent release to release, so you had to like reformulate another crazy game plan to like, okay, well, let me just see how this is going over here. It just gets a little wild. And uh, that kind of, I kind of just, threw my hands up in the air and was like, okay, this is, I'm just throwing this money away. And I now put that money into crypto and Web3 music because I believe in that as a stronger long term play. And I do think that like I will have to eventually go back to the drawing board and kind of like attack the Facebook ad system, or maybe try like the Twitter ads or Google ads or something different to switch it up, uh, uh, and see if I can get better results. Because it's really just about experimentation and trying like a bunch of different things. But it was just like literally thousands of dollars just gone, and you
Yeah.
get like a couple streams, and it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I throwing away all of this money to get like a couple more um, Spotify followers or a couple more streams? These aren't like actual fan. Sometimes, like, I still have a bunch of Instagram followers who found me through ads and, um, like engage with my content. So it wasn't like a complete wash. It wasn't, but like, I don't want to know the cost per person that was, because it
Yeah.
probably was not super efficient. Um,
Yeah.
it really like just it just wasn't like a fun thing to do either. It's like the last
Yeah.
thing you want to be doing, like is going like the ad platform itself is just a nightmare to navigate. It's like
Oh,
they're
I know it's terrible.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the worst design thing. Like the fact that you have to take like hours of your life just to understand like how to set up an advert, like a basic ad. Um, it's not very like I feel like they would make more money if they just made it like a lot easier. And they kind of have made it
Yeah.
easier to do on mobile, where you can like, oh, I can just do like a little basic ad. But if you want like the real results, you got to do like the retargeting stuff. You got to do like the um, oh, they like clicked on my link. So now they have a cookie. Now I know who they are. Now I can, or like finding like other artists to do the like being able to see like I have three different audiences and I'm testing out, do does the audience who likes Radiohead or Tame Impala, like which one is getting better results, and then go with that one. Like you can't really do that on mobile.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that takes like a lot of research to kind of like set up, let alone like understand what you're looking at for results wise, and then make adjustments to it. Um, yeah, it does need to be done because this Web3 space is still so small, still so new. Like there still needs to be outreach going on, and I've been trying to do that like as organically as possible. But um, you know, like advertising works because that we have like they've been doing it since the 50s or whatever, ever since television came on, or newspaper ads. Like it clearly works. It just is like the systems in place right now, or when I was using it, were not. They just kind of like were killing the vibe, killing my soul, and I think it's good that I kind of like stepped away from it for a bit, kind of discovered like the Web3 scene and was able to have funds to like contribute to what was going on over here, and like network and talk to people and meet people. But I do think in order to grow, like there'll have to be some type of re assessment and like kind of attempt to go back into it, as much as I don't want to do it. But you know,
Yeah.
have you
Yeah,
tried it?
yeah, I've also tried it. I've basically come to exactly the same conclusions as you. Like, yes, it works, but I think the like return that you get as a small creator is, you know, you're basically throwing money out of the window. I think that the numbers that you're going to get when it comes to like, you know, cost per impression or cost per click is going to be much lower when you're a huge, you know, company or a huge music group or
Or like you have
huge
some
artist.
name brand recognition?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Once you already have like once people already know about you, I think an ad, you know, especially on like Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, I think that'll work extremely effectively because you already have that recognition. Then all you need to do is get that impression, and that's all you need. Like the person's already they're looking to click, right? They already want your new music, right? Drake puts out a new track. I'm sure that he runs Instagram ads, and I'm sure that those do extremely well because I want to hear the new Drake, even though I'm not a big Drake fan, right? And so, you know, that I think works really well. But I agree. For a small musician, you're throwing money out the window, and yeah, I think you're kind of forced to do it at some point. I think along the way. I mean, you're not forced to, but I think it does help some point along the way. But I think if you do it too early, you can definitely be throwing like
yeah.
basically an infinite amount of money out the window for no results.
The actually, just to like touch on that, like what you were saying though, that like one of the strategies is to like cast a super broad net, see
Yeah,
who is kind of interested in the content, and then like retarget those people. Like this person watched 50 or 75% of the video, so like
yeah,
retarget those people, and then like it kind of creates that effect that you were talking about. But it's also like that costs a lot more money than it would for a Drake like character, who
yeah,
probably, you know, uh, uh, and there has been like artists who have done it successfully. There is you know, like case studies of how this and that is supposed to work, but it there has to be a better way. And also, this was like before like TikTok was really popping off as like the TikTok is breaking the music now, and
yeah,
it like Instagram natural push was so like not really, they kept like cutting you back. They essentially were like, hey, if you want to people to see your stuff, you got to buy ads, you know. they
yeah.
they were really like twisting your arm if you like wanted any type of natural engagement to happen. um
Yeah, I'm
but
pretty sure if you had a account that was labeled as an artist account or musician or creative, that they would automatically throttle like your posts, like unless you pushed ads, which is like, I mean, that's super unfriendly in my opinion.
oh, it's just a little scummy.
Yeah, just slightly, right?
Especially when it's like, hey, you have like actual like brands that are making money, you could be doing this too. um
Yeah, exactly.
but that was like the narrative for a while, was like you gotta ads. Now the narrative is TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. And I was kind of secretly hoping that TikTok was gonna get banned, so I didn't have to go back to posting on there. But um, but it didn't get banned, so it looks like I'm gonna have to, because I did the TikTok grind for a little bit, and similar experience to the ads, where it just was like super draining, super. There'd be like sometimes I'd spend hours and hours on a video, like, oh, this is gonna be so cool, and then like 100 views, and then other times I'd like post a. It does give you that like dopamine hit, like when you post a video, and then it's like, oh, this got like 20,000 views. That's crazy. Uh, but it just
Fake
comes.
views.
Yeah, it just comes so like not reliably. And then I was seeing like staying relevant on there. You know, like there'd be people who when I started using TikTok were huge, and then all of a sudden they'd pop back up and they were barely getting any engagement because they, tried something different and the algorithm didn't like it. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like really cutthroat, and you don't get to keep, unless you're like actively funneling people elsewhere. You don't really get to keep that audience you're building. But it's undeniable that it's like broken so many songs on the platform that I feel like you have to have some type of presence there, but the amount of time that you want to allocate to it needs to be used wisely.
Yeah, I feel like it, at least it seems like to me, I could be wrong, but, and granted, I probably am wrong given that I don't really use TikTok too much anymore, if at all. Like, I used to look at it, a few years ago, but now I don't even have the app because I just think it's like absolute brain rot.
You don't
But
want Chinese spyware on your phone?
I actually don't. I don't not have it for that reason. I just think the short form content is like I think it's really bad.
Dude,
Like I
I
notice,
agree. I agree so hard with that. Go
yeah,
on.
yeah. I just notice like in myself how much better off I am when I listen to a 30 or 40 or an hour long conversation, or I watch a whole movie rather than watching a 20-minute TV show or TikTok after TikTok after TikTok, and like your attention span goes down, and then your ability to like concentrate on your own work, like you get more and more distracted, and I'm already feeling like I'm distracted enough. Like I already feel overly distracted. I don't need any more of that. So, especially since my accident, like after my accident happened in 2020, I basically stopped using all social media simply because like I couldn't use it. Like I was like in a hospital bed and like couldn't use it. And like before that, I was on Instagram probably like I don't know. I'd be either looking at it for like probably more than 3 hours a day, just on Instagram. Like and afterwards wasn't looking at it at all, and I'm just like so happy that that happened because now I check Instagram simply because like I message musicians because some musicians don't have Twitter. I prefer Twitter because text content to me is less, I don't know, less bad.
I
Maybe
will
I'm
say
making
I'm so
excuses.
happy. I'm so happy that like Twitter is. I feel like I've taken to Twitter a lot better than I've taken to TikTok content. Like it just
Yeah,
comes easier to me to like
yeah,
say some stuff and then like move on with your day, as opposed to
yeah,
like, oh, I gotta craft this like engaging like video that hooks them in immediately and then like takes them on a journey. It's like now you can just post like a stupid comment and and
yeah,
then or like a meme photo and then you get like a bunch of like visibility that way, and that just feels a lot. That was just more on my wavelength. So I'm happy that like, through coming on Web3, that was where I kind of Twitter became like my least used platform to my most used platform. Um,
same.
yeah, like I would only use Twitter for like checking out. There was like some, like politics stuff was happening on there, so I'd like look at it for
Yeah,
that. But outside of that, really not really a lot happening. But um, I'm definitely glad that it's kind of like pulled me, like Web3's pulled me over back onto Twitter and away from Instagram and TikTok.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, and like you, I also made a transition into Web3. Um, I'd be curious to know how you transitioned into Web3. Like
Do you want to
it
go
is,
first?
yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Um, Basically, when I was out of the accident, before the accident, I'd like, bought crypto and like I knew what crypto was, and I'd heard of like, punks and like, some of the other big things in NFTs, but I wasn't really like a crypto G-gen. I didn't really fully understand any of like the concepts or about like a wallet or like some of the more
Like what
nuanced things that
minting
are
was,
exactly that kind of
the
aspect of it,
lingo.
what an NFT really was. And so or really like what a token or like the idea of ownership. I really wasn't exposed to that, but I knew what crypto was. And then after the accident, I basically wanted to do something. Like I wanted to learn how to use new pieces of technology like the quad stick, which I use to control the computer. And so I decided to like create like my own small like NFT collection and just like because I wanted to do the artwork. Like I at that time it was like the boom of crypto, right? There was a new thing on the news every week about like these you know people who were
Monkey
making all sorts
pictures.
of money. Yeah, all sorts of money on monkey pictures and pixelated things. And so I was like, okay, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure out some cool thing to do. So I ended up like teaching myself how to use the quad stick, and I learned how to use Blender, and I learned how to use some simple like code programs and Python to like control colors and basically do generative 3D work. So I you know was working in that field, and I wasn't really doing it because I wanted to sell 1,000, 100,000 of them. I was really doing it to just challenge myself to do something that I didn't know if I could do easily. But I learned how to do it, and then after that, it was right about the time that that Loners was crowdfunded, and I had been basically just starting to work on music again after my accident, and so basically there was just things were happening kind of at the right time for me to be kind of funneled into this Web3 music space. And so I met some really cool people. I think one thing that initially really attracted me to the space was how open people were to talk. um, I wasn't really used to that because most of the time when you're working in music, like people just don't they just don't talk to people that they don't know. And so
Yeah, it's like
going
an
into a
ego
space
thing.
where exactly, which is understandable because you only have so much time and you're looking for people who are interested in the same thing as you. And I think that's part of the reason why Web3 was a little bit more open arms, is because people thought, oh well, these people are interested in the same thing as me, so maybe I'll talk to them a little bit more. And so I was really happy with kind of like leaders like Oshi and Rio and some other guys um, that really were like surprisingly welcoming, at least from my perspective, because these are guys that like I'm like I feel like I'm a fan, right? While I was learning production, I'd be listening to a lot of their music, their early music, and they were like, they were the guys that already had successful music careers that were going in a new direction, and I was curious, right? And so that's basically how I ended up getting so interested in this space, was really just because I was already kind of looking into NFTs and some dudes that I thought were, really making interesting and truly different music, right? Like Rio has his own sound, like Jeremy has his own sound. Oshi has like these guys, they were unique already in the music game. And so the fact that they were all in the same space, I was like, I have to be here. Like this is what I'm here for. And then I started listening to what they were talking about, and I was like, well, this sounds even better, right? Now I was even more attracted to it because of this idea of decentralizing kind of ownership, and you know, I, the rest is like, and that's really how I ended up in the space. How about yourself?
Damn. Uh, question: was the accident before COVID started or in the middle of COVID? Just to get like a
It was in the middle of COVID. It was actually almost 3 years ago. It will be 3 years ago in July. So it was in 2020.
damn.
So it was right in the middle of COVID. When I was injured, I ended up like my parents had to get special passes to be able to go visit me in the hospital. Uh,
That's
yeah, it
yeah.
was
I
like
can't even imagine how
bad
wild
bad
that was because
timing.
they were crazy like about coming in and out of hospitals. So
Oh
that
yeah, no, it was
wow.
bad. They were like there would literally be like people like being like rolled out on stretchers because they like had died while I was in there. So it's definitely like not the best time to be in there, but
Not good vibes. Not good vibes.
yeah, for sure.
um.
I wasn't really
Uh,
worried about that, to be honest, though.
true.
Yeah.
Very true. Okay, I guess when COVID first began, I kind of started getting into because I was bored. I was like, hey, everyone seems to be trading stocks. Let's have some fun, trade some stocks. So I did that for like that first period of time, was on Wall
GameStop,
Street.
GameStop, GameStop.
That's where I'm going. That's where it's
Wall Street bets, baby.
yeah, that because I like it was fun. Like that was they're like a fun community of people to be around. Like it's like
Definitely.
you're not doing anything all day, and it's like there's a bunch of people over here like good jokes, good
Definitely.
uh good memes. It was like a just a people like laughing at each other, like losing tens of thousands of dollars. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, um, so, I was kind of dabbling a bit in that while like just, in between doing like writing some more songs. And like I already wasn't a huge fan of just like the Federal Reserve and how like Wall Street's set up and da da da, but I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand how like, effed it was until like the GameStop thing happened because my brother was also kind of like dabbling, and he was pretty early on the GameStop train, and he was like, "Hey," and I was like, "GameStop," like I just thought I thought it was ridiculous until he didn't explain to me like why, and when I saw why, I was like, "Oh, okay, like let me buy some of this because this is actually kind of hilarious."
Yeah.
So I started buying into it, and then they turned the buy button off, and all that it went down how it went down, and that kind of just completely disillusioned me from the fact that like you can actually like it's not a fair game. Like I'm not going to play the game when it's rigged
Yeah.
like that to that extent. So um
It's overtly rigged now.
yeah, it's like so openly rigged.
Yeah.
I just okay, put a couple of dollars here and there to like maybe like save up over the period of 50 years to have like a nice little sum of money. But or they could just crash the stock market whenever they want, or like, say that stock that you bought is gonna go out and we can just, do some magic behind the scenes with the numbers that nobody understands because it's so convoluted. Um, and it just was all like messed up. And I was like I said, because before, like I first bought Bitcoin in 2017, I bought at the peak, like a silly person. But I held it. I held like the entire time, like the little bit of Bitcoin that I had. So when it started running up again, I was kind of like paying attention to what was going on over here. I had a homie mention sound to me, so I kind of like was looking. I like, checked it out to see what that was about. Um, and it was like too expensive, so I just kind of said I'll come back to this later. It's too expensive for me to be involved in right now. Um, and you know when the GameStop thing happened, I was like completely just done with the stock market, and I'm still holding my GameStop, and I'm not going to sell until the hedgies close their shares. Um, um, yeah, DRS your shares, people.
They're just gonna delete it, man.
Dude, that's what I think. There's no winning. Like some
Yeah.
people, if you go on the game subreddit, and I still check from time to time, super stonk. Um, People still believe that it can happen, like the moss can happen, but I just think like if it comes down to that, they're just going to shut it all off. They'll just be like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a like it's all not real. Like it's all
Yeah.
like
I know.
it's and that was like the appealing part about crypto was like it's you know the ledger's public, everyone can see what is
Yeah.
happening.
They can't
um
turn it off. Yeah.
yeah, they can't turn it off. um so that just cool, I'm about it. And while I'm doing music and all this other stuff in the background, I was on Twitter kind of following some stuff about like either GameStop or just some music related news. and I saw something Ashi tweeted, and I saw he was actually getting dogpiled by a lot of people because this was the time where NFTs were killing the environment, and anyone who's selling NFTs is like, worse than all of these giant oil companies, or they're going after like small artists or medium-sized artists who are trying to like make a living during the pandemic. And I kind of was like, yeah, what the heck? Like, why are you going after the? I just to make sense to me. I wasn't like super into NFTs. I hadn't purchased any of them, and I kind of made some comments, going at the people who were going at him, and he followed me from there. Him and someone else followed me that were like in the scene, and I actually got you. Do you know Anthony Fantano?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if he like ratioed me on one of those NFT tweets,
Oh,
he ratioed me down
oh
bad.
no.
Yeah, it's somewhere way back in my timeline, but I just was like, he was trashing artists for scamming their fans with NFTs, and I was like, what's the problem with this versus selling like a limited edition vinyl? And then he was just, I forgot exactly what he said, but whatever it was, I had tons and tons of anti NFT people coming at me, which honestly like made it more cool. Like, okay, everyone's hating on it. Like, what's going on over here? Let me check it out more. And I saw the Rio frameworks drop, and that
Yeah.
was the first drop I minted. I got Terra Largo. I don't know how to say it, but that was what I got. And I kind of like, first of all, the way the drop happened, I really liked that, where it was like you didn't know what it was until it revealed, and it had different levels of rarity. Like that just kind of reminded me of like opening a pack of Pokemon cards or something, and
Yeah.
like that inherent sense of let me collect things. Yeah,
Yeah. The
that you have
gambling
from
aspect.
yeah, yeah. It's I like it. I think it's cool. Like obviously you don't want to be a gambling addict, kids. If not fun. You got to do it responsibly, but it's like an interesting thing to do with music, like specifically, like,
Yeah.
hey, I got like an album, and I can make the songs have different rarities and kind of like give different perks to like different ones, and uh, uh then I saw the link where you could go to Guild XYZ and then connect your wallet, and then it would check and see that you owned one of his NFTs and then let you into his chat. And then I was like, oh, I get this now. I kind of get like why this could be cool. Um,
Yeah.
and then, you know, now we're here. I spiraled.
Yeah.
I spiraled.
Yeah, I
But
feel like that it has that effect where like, you get a little bit involved, and then if you're predisposed to already be attracted to a few of the aspects of it, like you're just bound to spiral even more. It's just natural, I think.
yeah, and it's like, I was in the phase where I wasn't a fan of like how the traditional system was. Like I thought the traditional system, with like the Facebook and Spotify paying you like nothing for your streams, like I thought that was trash. And it's just like, what am I doing this for? Like why am I spending all this money to get like no streams? Like how am I gonna make this sustainable? And then I see Web3, and I'm, see a place where people are actually trying to like change the music industry, and that's like a cool thing. If you're an artist who is kind of tired of how things are being run with you know essentially like an algorithm or a record label deciding if you live or die.
Yeah, 100%. I think um there's a lot of frustration, right? There's a lot of people being fed up with, the current state of affairs in music, especially as an independent artist. I don't think there's I mean, of course there's complaints from people who are signed to big deals, even small deals. Personally, I'm not really a big fan of those complaints just because
Dude, same bro.
I
Wait,
think
wait, go on.
I just okay. Some people really like don't like this take, but those record companies are giving them like without those record companies, these artists would be no one. That's just the reality. And so even if they're giving them like, even if they were paying them 5% of what they're like, if Taylor Swift was making 5% of like what she's bringing in for those companies because of her music, like it's still, I still think it's overvalued. I just think that the amount of complaining that like larger artists do when their music is being pumped out with millions and millions of dollars of ads and radio placements and plays and features that they would never be able to get without the like company behind them and connections that they would never get. I don't know. It's a little bit sickening, and it feels a little bit like, okay, you got
Entitled.
your, yeah, you got your cookies, right? You got what you wanted, and now you're complaining because you didn't get more. Like, I don't know. I'm really not a fan of that. Yeah,
I
it
I
just
hundred
leaves
I
a
hundred
sick
I hundred
taste.
percent agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm like I see a lot of the complaint of like, oh, like I don't own my masters and like, that's like wrong and da da. Da. But I'm
so
like,
go
hey,
independent.
I know. I'm like, hey, you weren't complaining when you were riding that wave all the way up to where you're at
Exactly.
now. You
Yeah,
were like signing all the deals and taking all the loans and like making all the stuff happen when you were leveraging what the label had for your success. And now that you have a platform, you're gonna come over here and say that like, hey, I don't know my masters. And it's like, I didn't, sign away your masters. Did someone steal them from you or did you sign them away?
yeah. And that's not to say that there aren't like objectively bad deals. Like I think that musicians do get screwed, but I think that the great majority of the complaints are, like we just described. It's, basically entitled successful artists that, are just, they are already rich that want to be even more rich. And, I, I, I don't feel bad. It's kind of like the Wall Street, guy who's like running a hedge fund that is already making millions if not billions a year, and then he has the audacity to call up daddy in the government and say, well, I don't want to lose this money on GameStop, so you need to pause the halt the trades or make sure that my shorts don't and it's just like, I mean, yeah, I don't have much patience for that kind of complaint, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, there's just a difference between being deceived and like knowingly signing something where you're
Exactly.
making an exchange and you got your part of the exchange and now you're mad that you had to give something up to get what you got.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely. There's a difference between like someone hiding a bad deal or like using coercion to like get someone to like give something away versus like you have a deal and like I mean, you can like read it or like get a lawyer to read it or whatever. Usually they're not that complicated. You know what I mean? Like if it says that you're not going to own your masters, it's not like that's hidden in fine print, right? That's pretty clear, on day one. And so yeah, I'm with you. I think that you know there's a little bit too much complaining, but there are people who have chosen to, they had deals, they've chosen to go independent, they're in Web3 now, they may be less successful, they may be more successful, who knows. But I respect them for doing it in a way that I think is tasteful, really. Like I don't hear them complaining if they're giving criticism of record labels. It's in a certain way. They're not really saying, well, I'm only being critical of record labels because what they did to me, you know? They're saying, look,
yeah,
this is what record labels do, and this is the areas that we could improve them, as opposed to
and I
just
mean,
saying, yeah,
there definitely is like a lot of valid complaints about record labels, but like
for sure.
when you're making it about like just yourself and how it only affects you to help like the scene, and it's like more than just like the deal you signed, it's like the
Yeah,
entire scene. You got to look at the bigger picture.
yeah,
That's like when it kind of gets a little whiny.
yeah, definitely. All right, speaking of bigger picture, we've talked a little bit about kind of the whole music NFT, music Web3 scene and how there's a bit of a problem currently because of kind of how it's branded, right? How it, to, with lack of a better word, what the optics are from like an outsider's perspective, and basically just simply because it's associated with NFTs, which are associated with scammy, ape
With
JPEGs that
Ben.eth.
and Ben.eth. Yeah, exactly. And so, we did have a short disagreement about using the term on chain. I'm curious to know, in general, your argument for using a new term other than music NFT, using a term specifically like on chain. Like, from my perspective, and this is not to knock your take at all, right?
No, for sure. I actually had a conversation like where like a Swab was holding a space on Twitter, and I got into like another debate with somebody over like this exact topic. So it did help me kind of like see what they're saying a little bit, but I'd love to hear it coming from you.
So, just from my perspective, I think that, and I'm not going to name names because I don't like to start drama, but I think that there
Drama,
are,
drama.
no, I think that, I think that there are a few currently, like, I would call them like powerful simply because they have large following, like music NFT influencer types that are pushing for a rebrand, specifically using the term on chain. And I think that while I am 100% on board with some kind of rebrand, because I think that there are problems with the term music NFT for reasons why, which I'm sure we would 100% agree why. You know, it's just associated with bad things, bad optics, just like Apple chooses to use words because it allows them to control what it stands for. I think that using basically our own term to refer to, you know, music collectibles that are on the blockchain would be a smart move because it would allow the community to control what it meant to the public. I think that because there's like one or two guys that are kind of like pushing for the term on chain, and they're kind of, it kind of seems like they're doing it for the wrong reasons, and that they're not really taking into account, like, I don't know what the word means, and like the fact that the word, like, I just see it as like the word on chain, or like the term on chain is essential to like blockchain tech. And like, for from my perspective, if a community that's like under the umbrella of like blockchain tech, which inherently, like, we rely on blockchain tech, like, you know, guys like David that are like actively like looking to make it better by using better, whether it's like going L2 and like, you know, optimism or whatever it is instead of ETH for gas fees. And like, you know, we're inherently tied to the technology. So like, that term, if you were to take a step back, like, and go from the like macro level, like on chain means something specific. And I think, I don't know, if I was just like if I was a crypto bro, for example, and I heard like some like little music NFT like kids or whatever using the term on chain to describe assets that were not 100% on chain, especially when like there are people who are like putting their whole projects on chain, and that's like part of their, like, what makes them, like, they've spent thousands if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in gas fees to put like their assets on chain. I don't know, it seems like a little bit, I don't know.
Why would they do that?
Why would they do that?
That just sounds like a
That's a
lot of
good,
money.
no, I mean, it is a lot of money, but I think the idea being like, the term on chain really is for like assets that exist with the like on the blockchain. Like, if everything else goes off and you just have like a computer connected to the blockchain and everything else is disconnected, that, you know, the assets are there. And like, that can be whether it's the, you know, JSON file that is the NFT, or it could be the actual image that is like translated into, like, the bytes are literally like translated into text, right? So I don't know,
What
that's my
could you give me an
perspective.
example of like a project that does this? Do you know, like, are there a lot of projects that do that type of thing? Just out of curiosity.
That are 100% on chain.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Well, like
is
on,
there a platform to like mint stuff on chain? I'm genuinely curious because
like a platform if you wanted to deploy a collection.
yeah, like would I have to do a manifold contract to do that type of thing?
No, I don't. I actually don't. I don't know if Manifold is even 100% on chain, but it may be. I don't
Uh,
actually think it is.
I'm just asking because like of all the platforms that I've minted on, or like just checked out to see the minting process, it seems all of them. use that's similar where like they upload the music to that, what is it called, like IPS?
IPFS. Yeah.
Yeah, like they uploaded there, and then the
Yeah.
um so I just was
And
wondering if there was
IPFS,
actually a place I could check out that did
yeah,
everything on chain, like where it would
I
like
don't
you could
I don't
upload.
think that there's like a I don't think there's a platform that I could be wrong, but off the top of my head, I don't think that there's a platform that easily like does that for like whole collections. But like I don't know, there's just something about it where like I just feel like we can do better as a community. Like I feel like we can do better than like the only reason why we're using on chain is because it's a term that's been ripped like it's from the community already. It's been stolen from the community and like repurposed to like meet the needs of like a few people who are trying to like see themselves as like rebranding the community for the right or wrong reasons. I'm not saying that they have necessarily the wrong reasons, but I just think that we can do better. I don't think that we need to use a term that you know has meaning already.
From my understanding, the person who came up with the term originally was the Zora founders. Do you know if this is correct or not? Like one of the Zora people, like I was sent like an article talking about like on chain, which granted was probably what you're talking about, like a slightly different description than what we would
Yeah.
say in the rebrand. Did have they issued, do you know if they've issued like any type of like statement saying that they agree or disagree with like context?
Like the person who like quote unquote coined the word. Is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, like
No, like
coined it, not like rebranded it, like the
I'm not aware
OG.
of like some OG making a statement. I don't even think, to be blatantly honest, like first of all, I don't think it's a new term. I think it's been around like for a decent time, and like blockchain is not like new. It's not a new term either. Like it is like a technical term. So I I definitely am not like I don't want to say that I'm 100% like I know everything on the matter. It just
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't.
it 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 leaves a sour taste in my mouth to like and as like someone who's active in the community, like I collect like many music NFTs, like I would not like I would have a hard time signing off on something that felt like just like from my perspective, like I wouldn't want to use that term. You know what I mean? It just seems
Do
like wrong.
you well, I guess like where I'm coming at it from is
Make the
like,
argument.
okay, the token is on chain. That shows your ownership.
That's true.
That is like the reason why I feel like a lot of us are even here is because we're talking about like ownership of music and like allowing people to, you know, either mint or distribute music in different ways that, you know, are isn't possible on a Web2 context. And the fact that that token of ownership is on chain, which you know, even though the term like doesn't like it's not talking about, I feel like the term isn't like talking about the literal music, but it's like more so referring to the ownership of the token. And like it's like a quick way of saying like this is what's different. Like this is
Yeah.
what's
Okay.
different than this. And I honestly feel like a lot of people like the idea of this rebranding is for onboarding new people. And I feel like if we're trying to onboard new people, they won't have any of this context. They honestly probably won't even care about like what we're talking about
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
true.
And
That's true.
I, I feel like it's different. I feel like digital collectible is kind of can like that was the alternative you had mentioned, and I don't hate it. I just think like it can be used to describe other things. It can be used to describe like a I feel like it has been used to describe other things that aren't specifically this. And I feel like on-chain music is a more like if you say tell the average person on-chain music, have you heard this term before? I feel like 99% of them are gonna be like, no, I've never heard that
Okay, but
before. What it was?
I I hear you. Quick question then. When you say on-chain music to someone, what do they think? Where's the music?
it's in the chain. But I get that. I get that
Al-
might be like a little.
Also, I was gonna say also, like, you mentioned ownership, which is quite valid, right? The whole idea behind NFT is like a ledger that has ownership on it. But just to, like, not to play devil's advocate, but to play devil's advocate, let's say you had a stock market exchange, right? That where you could, you know, buy and sell stocks, right? The ownership of which was recorded in a decentralized manner, right? So, like, it would say, Lucas owns 1 share of Tesla, right? And that would be recorded on chain, right? In a decentralized way. If the stock is on chain, but the record of who owns it if is off chain, well, what's the point of the record being off chain? Like, that doesn't solve like any of the inherent issues that, you know, that make decentralized things like advantageous. Like, the whole reason why we're trying to use decentralized things, or, you know, in general, is, sure, you could say it has to do with ownership, but also has to do with like using more clever or like decentralized ways to store the medium, which IPFS is, right? It is, but it's not like, there's a reason why it's that, and it's not called, like, technically speaking, like a blockchain, right?
So why don't we just mint everything on chain then?
Well, because we were doing it through Ethereum. Ethereum's slow, just like Bitcoin. It's like overutilized, like too many transactions, too expensive, right?
So we're doing the decentralization, I feel like, to the best of the technology's ability. And
Yeah.
that's are we going to get more on chain than it currently is? That's my question. Like
I no
as a community.
No, I agree that I don't think that we're gonna, end up putting these assets on chain, which is why don't think that they should be called on chain. Like, I don't know. That's just, and at the end of the day, it's obviously not up to me. Like, if the community decides like they're gonna be called on chain assets, like, I'll just respond in the Twitter, you know, thread or whatever, saying, that I think that we could do better. But I do think, I don't know, it just feels like it's tech, like we're in a technical space. Like, why use a term that's already, like, and you can point
I
to some
just feel like
article that,
oh, you go on.
I was gonna say, you can point to an article that, like, claims that, someone branded the term on chain where they leave out the asterisk and it means something different than on chain with the, whatever. Like, I don't know, like, with or without the dash. I mean, I don't know, like, it means something different without the dash than with the dash. Like, I mean, that's pretty
I just think like this isn't a game that we're playing of like we've already acknowledged that this is a branding game. This isn't like a we're talking about like we're talking with
definitely.
other developers. And in the branding game, there's a lot of you know, oversights into the like actual like oversights of reality to make the branding more flashy, more like successful. You could say like more I guess successful is the best word. But the like the conversation where it's like, oh, like it'll, you know, kind of cause some confusion within. I feel like everyone in the scene kind of understands the general like gist of it. Like it's not like the we haven't been uploading the music like on the chain, but like we're trying to get people to join. We're trying to do that in like a way that gets their attention. I hope that when people hear something like on-chain music, it piques curiosity. I feel like a lot of words that Apple makes up out of thin air, it's not really like, you don't really know exactly what they mean. I wish I had the list in front of me to kind of like, just say it out loud, but the like some of the words like just aren't like they're renaming other things. They're renaming AI. They're renaming VR. They're renaming like they're just calling it something else. That I feel like that's essentially what we're trying to do in an attempt to just kind of wipe the slate clean. Like the goals are that this wipe the slate of all that like trash baggage that the NFT degens have brought upon us, where we become kind of like a laughing stock of the rest of the internet because uh, too many people lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah, scammers. Yeah,
And yeah, and they like we got to dump that because the music scene hasn't engaged in that to my knowledge. Like I haven't seen anyone in the sound ecosystem or the well, I guess you could say dreams never die. So I'll give you the one. uh Feeling a little rugged on that one, but aside from that one example, it's been mostly a positive, good vibes space. And
definitely,
why are we, dealing with this? So that's the first goal, is to kind of like remove that. The second goal is to, you know, pique the interest of people who are hearing this word and like generating curiosity, which I think it does. It might like lead them to incorrect conclusions off the bat, where it's like you assume something about it that's not actually true. But I also don't think that these people like are even going to care about the nitty. Like I don't think that like once it becomes a big enough thing, it's not gonna like all this stuff with like uh wallets and what chain am I on, like that's not really gonna become a, because for it to get to that point we're gonna have to eliminate a lot of these friction points. So I just feel
definitely.
like a lot of
Yeah,
that's going to be like way way in the background. um and some of these people will just be using emails to like make accounts and store stuff, like
yeah,
not even on a wallet. um it's really just like a branding thing, it's just a marketing thing. It's it's just something that is better than what we have now, and I think is a little more distinctive from like the digital collectibles, which you could say, oh, this CS:GO skin is a digital collectible. um it could be like, I feel like that can be used in a lot more contexts than saying something like on-chain music, because it does invoke the imagery of blockchain without like saying the word blockchain, which is kind of like a good area to be in, because you don't want the people who have super negative preconceived notions of blockchain to, you know, ah,
I 100% agree with what you just said. Especially about people not caring. I don't think people are gonna care whatsoever about what it's called. Especially people who are new to the space. Um, but I just and also like I'm not gonna go anywhere. Just because someone uses a term that I'm not gonna use, I'm not gonna
yeah, I
leave.
mean, we were making like jokes about it last night. Like Suave was like me. I think his name was like Mitchy. We were like debating about it. And he's like, "Oh, you guys kept it so civil." And da, da, da. I'm like, "Bro, this is such a dumb topic. Like, I'm not gonna be
It
like,
is. It is.
it's such a dumb thing to get like super super angry about." But I mean, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I think that you know whatever it is, the a term will win out. I'm glad that there is going to be another term, and whatever becomes the new like way of referring to it will be a step up from uh the NFT word, the no word.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. And I think that we're working towards that. I would love for some other leaders in the space, you know, to
oh,
be
I
vocal.
was I was gonna say, like, when you started this conversation, how you brought up the fact that you didn't like how it came from just like one leader. That was actually almost the exact point that um, was made when I was having the conversation the other night. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a very valid point that it's kind of came out of left field, one person just declaring it. But
Yeah.
uh, I, like I said, I don't hate it. Like I see it working. Maybe we should have some like field testing, conduct some what do they do, like the research panels where you get like a group of people and ask them, okay, how does this make, like kind of study it a little bit and see what the
For
effects
sure.
are. But
Yeah, because I mean, also what you don't want to do, and I also don't think this is gonna happen because, like you said, I don't think people really care too much about it. Like I think people that are already in the space are in the space. But what you don't want to happen either is like by quote unquote like rebranding to try to gain a larger audience, you lose like the core audience because like it was made like a lot of the like OGs and the collectors that have been here for a while are not like necessarily the most like active on Twitter, gonna start drama, and they, you know, they may not, I don't know, they may be turned off to it too. But like you said, I mean, the likelihood of that is obviously low. I just think that we can do better, and I think that I don't know. I would just love for some other leaders in the space who actually have, you know, like products that they're standing behind, and
I think that
like
would be the best way to do it, honestly, is if every single
yeah,
platform called it something different, like how Catalog calls their stuff records. I think that would
yeah.
probably be the most effective way of doing it.
I I think that's like mind blown genius, five head like 3,000 IQ right there. No, seriously, I think that's I think that's really smart. But yeah, until then, I think it's good to continue having the conversation, and I do think that we do need some kind of rebrand simply because of the, like you said, just the negative like
I
vibes
mean,
and
like if you talk to
history.
anyone not in the space and bring up the word NFT, it's like immediate cringe from them. They're like, ew,
Yeah,
yeah. So that's just not. There's no way to grow when that is the perception you have, especially in a bear market where we have even more like against us because we're not making any money and everyone thinks it's all ick. So
yeah.
uh, you should definitely frame this, hype it up and be like, this epic on-chain music debate, and
No, no,
get the get the
I'll get some
buzz.
good clips out of it for sure. But
Okay.
just to end it, if you wanna, I usually let my guests, like if they have anything, you know, anyone you want to speak to. It was obviously great having you on. Obviously, I'll put all your
A lot
socials
of
like
fun.
below the
Yeah,
video
no,
and
I appreciate
everything.
it.
But yeah, like if you, I don't know, we obviously want to reach like people that want to be in the like music NFT and NFT space.
What did you just say?
Troll voice, yeah. But obviously, yeah, people that are looking for, you know, an independent, decentralized, or just like more free space where they can like experiment and try new things. But yeah, if I don't know, you have any final words? Anything that you know, missed?
uh, I mean, if you're a artist or a fan of music and you're tired of just how stuff has been going with, we have like everything from Ticketmaster to Spotify screwing over artists and fans, in tons of different ways. Like if you're tired of it and you want to work with a bunch of other people who are trying to build an alternative to what we currently have, I would recommend hopping over on Twitter, doing a bit of research. um, you know go to some of these websites like Catalog Sound. Super Collector just launched theirs. You have Decent. There's like so many different platforms where you can find tons of good music and just see if just listen to some music and see if you like what's happening over here. Especially if you're an artist who's like a producer and you're like trying to make trying to find a place to uh, be heard. Because I mean, production is such like a lonely, isolating experience. Um, if you're looking for other people who are on the grind, doing a lot of work day in and day out, this is the spot. This is where all the people are who are trying to make stuff happen. So I recommend, uh, you know, taking a couple moments of your life and kind of just seeing what's happening over here.
Yeah, 100%. And vocalists too, because we got some interesting production going on, and you can never have enough good
Kids,
vocalists.
AI.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, it was
We
really
need
good
to
to.
make an AI clone of your voice.
You know, a year from now, I'm not even going to be doing this podcast anymore. It's going to be like Chat GPT is going to write the episode. I'm going to have a on screen, like, you know, visual representation of myself and a guest that I don't even know. And it's just going to, you know, have a conversation. But yeah, it was really great having you on. And, you know, I'll obviously, you know, we'll stay in touch. I'll be on the lookout for, you know, what you're doing and everything. And yeah, love to have you on in the future. Maybe after we, as a community, come up with a come up with a good rebrand. So yeah, it was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, same. Thank you again for having me on. And for sure, we'll stay in touch. Have a good night.